For those of you who don't know me, I'm Giuseppe Amato. I am, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Usually a big problem I have, because I'm a pretty quiet guy. I use he, him pronouns, and I've been at Parkrose, 2 years. It's been 2 years as of September 1st. Yeah. I was asked to share a bit of our story, and I have to tell you, I'm so honored to do so. Rob Tolick, who is at Waverly and also a chaplain, preached at my installation like a year and a half ago. And he said that I give off like great, big, proud Papa vibes whenever I talk about the church. And it's true. I mean, I'm younger than most of the people there, but I still give off the vibe. I love this community so much. But to tell the story of who we are and what we're up to these days, I actually have to go back a bit to the Pendleton conference. Not this last time, but the time before that. So when Molly Carlson was here, it was my first, what do we call this? Annual gathering, first annual gathering. And we had this breakout time where we were meeting different folks in the room. And it just so happens that I ended up going over to the table of a gentleman named Don Frew.
Yes.
We hit it off. Don was awesome. He left a big mark on me. And then, a month or so later, I saw him at a clergy cluster meeting, and he got this big smile on his face, and he grabbed my shoulder and he said, "Adam, it's so good to see you." That happened 2 more times. And at that point, Don said, "Okay, we need to start like getting to know each other better so I don't do this again." And that was the beginning of like some fairly regular lunches at Don's favorite diner over by Lloyd Center. And it was a really beautiful experience for me. I was still pretty new to the UCC. I was under care with the disciples at the time and was at associate pastor over at Cedar Hills. So I was still getting to know everybody, and Don was kind of a helpful usher, helping me learn some of the lay of the land. But during our first meeting, our first lunch together, he tells me about his church. And he gave off super proud Papa vibes. I asked him to share what his church was like, and he got this big smile on his face. And he started telling me this story about how when he started at the church, he realized and they realized they didn't need their building anymore. In fact, they needed to get out of the building. And while that was going on, one of their church friends down the street, Eastminster Presbyterian Church, was down to 8 people, and they were realizing they weren't going to be able to survive much longer. And so they came together. So this is actually the second Parkrose Community United Church of Christ location, formerly Eastminster Presbyterian Church. It's a merger. And it was very important to the Presbyterians in that room that they be able to bless the neighborhoods and not simply have their church be absorbed into the presbytery for them to use how they wished. Because they had a very specific idea for giving to the neighborhood, and that was a community garden. Now, when the community garden came up in his story, Don said, "Do you know whose idea this was?" And I'm still getting to know Don. I'm wondering if this is like a, give me my roses moment. And I said, "You?" He said, "No, I don't have a green bone in my body. I would have never come up with this idea. It was the Presbyterians' idea. who ended up coming into our church. So the last thing that Eastminster Presbyterian does, and the first thing that Parkrose Community United Church of Christ does, is create a community garden on their property. Can you go to the next slide? So this is Eastminster Community Garden. This is not a space we manage, so we don't have great pictures of it. That's actually a great thing that we don't manage it, by the way.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why this became necessary is because we're out in the food deserts. It's hard for people to get access to healthy, affordable food in our area. Folks will say, yeah, but there's a Winco and a Bi-Mart down the street. Yes, there is. And it's still very hard for people to get access to enough healthy, nutritious food for them and their families to thrive based on what they earn. Now, one of the things that I wanted to put on these slides was this proper credit to who's running things over in whatever particular area of the church. Because almost everything we do is in partnership with others. If we were the ones in charge of all of these things, they would fall apart or be extremely limited. Case in point, with this community garden, we have so many different languages spoken. If you walk by on any given day, you're going to hear Spanish, you're going to hear Russian, you may hear Mandarin, and so many other languages. And I speak English and really embarrass myself whenever I try to communicate in Spanish at all. We weren't going to get very far with this if we were the ones who needed to be the experts. But Portland Parks and Rec, they were happy to partner with us on this. And you know what that also means? It means we don't manage the plots. So when somebody's tomato plant is too big and it's hogging all of the turf, we don't need to get involved in that. Which is great, because I don't want to get involved in that. We already have enough issues. We don't need that. Can you go to the next slide? So that utilization of space became something that would become a theme in the next 13, 14 years of the church. Because of that connection, Portland Fruit Tree Project reaches out to us, and we create the Parkrose Community Orchard behind our church. So it's still on our campus, but it's in this otherwise unused area. But you know what it's good for? Trees. And so it grows trees, and those trees grow fruits. And so Portland Fruit Tree Project, along with many of our neighbors who often come up every single month, harvest that fruit. They tend to the trees. This last year, they partnered with our nearby high school so that we could have high school interns who were learning about agriculture and arborism. During spring break, the elementary school and Portland Fruit Tree Project partnered together so that those kids who wanted to learn about agriculture and have a good time in the back of our church got to do that. I was surprised how many kids turned out to learn about trees and soil and plants and bees, pollination, all of that. And they were having a fantastic time. Can you go to the next slide? And he and his organization, their primary mission is to provide support services for African American and biracial people in Portland. If you paid attention, you probably know that this is one of the more neglected people groups in our city. And the service that they do is so important. They provide various social services, navigation of resources, classes, parenting classes, NAAA, and so many other things as well. Now, you might wonder what happens with their funding since this last year has been not so great for anybody who's not a billionaire. Well, it was slashed. I know, terrible. And we have Tim reach out to us. Tim's like, I don't know if we're going to be able to survive This was at the beginning of August. The end of August, Tim comes into the office and he just says, yeah, so it's all fine. They realized that they actually do need us because they had all these folks who needed to go to diversions and they had no place to go. So we're still around. And that was fantastic news for us because I don't think anybody can replace what Sovalti is doing in the Parkrose, Russell area. Maybe not even in the city. Can you go to the next slide? So as you look through our hallway, you'll see that there's another office space, and this one is marked We Shine. So on our campus, this is actually going to be the first thing you notice before you even see the church. Our Parkrose Community Village, which is a micro village. Now there is a story that goes along with this. So this is going to be like the inception moment of my story. It's a story within a story. By this point, before we get to this relationship, it's COVID. And Dawn and Robert, his husband, are just, they've been working so hard for retirement. And now it's finally here, and they moved to Astoria. Dawn was such an important and beloved figure in our church. So there was a lot of grief that Dawn was moving on. And some mixed feelings because, I mean, Dawn deserves to retire. Everybody knew this was Dawn and Robert's dream. And at the same time, it was COVID. And into this setting, Diane Rodriguez, proud Clackamas UCC member, became our interim minister for what would end up being 3.5 years. Now the plan was not for it to be 3.5 years. That's just what was lucky enough to happen. And in the midst of all of this change and heartbreak for the church, she's coming alongside the congregation and doing what good interims do, helping the church discern who they are, what they care about, what they can use the space for. And when you know it, they got a big empty parking lot now. So the church decides, like so many of our churches throughout the area decided, right? Well, let's use that. We've got all of these folks who need a safe place to sleep. Let's just let them sleep in our parking lot. And also, like a lot of us found out, that was really, really hard. Yeah. It's really hard. Around this time, Dawn ended up passing away. Now I'm bringing this up because I've known a lot of churches who during their interim periods decide they want to play it safe. They want to get through it quickly. They don't want to do too much work. We don't want to look too closely into the mirror. Like maybe we could look at the nice self-portrait we had commissioned. We could do that, right? And this church decides we're going to experiment with this camp. We're going to try that. And we're going to try to stare into the mirror and learn who we are. And Diane's trying to be the non-anxious presence, guiding them through this process. And then when this experiment fell apart and we realized we couldn't keep people safe, we had to disband the camp. And we were heartbroken. The church was heartbroken. And at this point, Erica Martin, our community life director, would tell you that Jan McManus came riding into our parking lot on a giant horse, waving a flag, saying, "Come, follow me." And that's Jan in the middle. Jan retired shortly before COVID from a very long and distinguished career as a social worker. And like us, realized that this housing crisis wasn't going to go away and that there's stuff that she could do with others that could make a difference. And so she came to us and said, hey, I heard what you all tried to do. Would you like to do it with something a bit more permanent? And that was the beginning of our relationship with We Shine and what would eventually become the Parkrose Community Village. We Shine now has 3 different locations. They all tend to a different specific population that has their own particular challenges when it comes to housing. Our village focuses specifically on LGBTQIA+ individuals. Now, when it says that it's a village, it means it. They do everything they can to try to foster community together. They have weekly community village meetings. They try to do outings together. They have specialized and personalized assistance for whatever barriers exist for people. The 2 other locations, one is for aging and disabilities, and the other is for female individuals. So, it starts here. And it's very easy for me to jump to what it is now. But around the time that Dawn is being grieved by the church in multiple ways, and we have this new dream that we're putting in the work for, we let our neighbors know what we're up to. And they start showing up enthusiastically, but in opposition, which is not ideal. Yeah. So what you can see here is one of the many, many stories. Like in the center, you'll notice there's kind of a cut off news segment happening. This is one of the many, many stories that was happening during the COVID era when, for some reason, our news media wants us to think, like, Portland's on fire, it's all going downhill, the rats are the size of dogs, and they're gonna eat your children. And while this is, our neighbors are terrified that that's gonna be their reality. And yet, Jan and everybody that ended up working with her continued to put in the work. We continued to put in the work. Diane continued to put in the work. And when we opened, a year later, violent crime in our area was down. Noticeable drug use still existed, but it was down. And the same neighbors who opposed us were now showing up to our community barbecue hosted by We Shine to say, hey, thanks. Thanks for doing what you're doing. How can we help? How can we get the word out? The main organizer for all of this opposition, the one who had doxed our church employees, the one who had doxed the We Shine employees, is one of their brand ambassadors now. And they remind me, and I need this reminder, that people can change.
Amen. Future rising.
Yeah. Can you go to the next slide? So, a couple of months ago, I guess it was just last month, We Shine and Humans for Housing, humansforhousing.org, hosted a viewing of No Place to Grow Old, a documentary about the fastest growing unhoused population in the country, which happens to be those who are retired age plus. They hosted it at our church, and what you can't see in this picture is that the mayor and his wife came. You've got Jan here, you've got one of the producers for Humans for Housing in the middle, and Gail Parker, our site director. We keep pushing ahead, not just for the world that we want, but for the Portland we know is possible. You know? And sometimes it feels like, well, you know, we're just one little church in one little neighborhood, Portland. What difference does it make? It makes a difference. And it makes a difference that is more outsized than we realize, I think. Can you go to the next slide? Now, as an extension of this relationship with We Shine, for the first few months of the village, we needed to help people get showered in laundry. Laundered. Is that the word? Clean clothes. And so we worked with Cultivate Initiatives. And they would bring the shower and laundry truck over, and we provide lunches. And then, We Shine didn't need that anymore. But our neighbors did. And so, every single Wednesday, we partner with Cultivate Initiatives. I'm going to get closer here so I can try to read the ones from our list last year. Concordia Nursing College, Hairstylist for Humanity. That list has grown. There's now Care Oregon, who comes pretty regularly too. And they provide services for our neighbors who need them. And I just want to remind us all here, our neighbors are us. There's so many times that our congregants have also needed these services. In fact, I've had to sit at that table a few times to get my own blood pressure checked. I can't imagine why. The work continues because the need continues. But now Wellness Wednesday has become this thing when not just like unhoused folks come and get lunch and get nursing care and get a shower if they need it or laundry, but it's become a communal time. Can you go to the next slide? We have regulars now who even after they got off the streets kept coming because we're their community. So Tracy there with her bike, she didn't have an initial success story with We Shine, but she tried. And that led to her eventually having stable long-term housing. And now she comes every single week and plays our piano very loudly, very, very loudly. And if I don't hear that piano on a Wednesday, I'm wondering where Tracy is. And this is Jim. And he brings his dog with him. His dog, who has made a mess in our church, if you could believe it. I know. We can't have animals come making messes in our church. No, we do. It's part of ministry. It's part of ministry. And without that dog, without the cats that people sometimes bring in, we would not see these people. Some of these people would not still be here. But he's here. If we don't see him, we worry. We have a lady named Rita. Rita is the sweetest woman in the world. Rita comes on Wednesdays. If she's not there, Tracy comes and she seeks me out and she asks, "Where's Rita? Is she okay?" I love that so much. I love that for Rita, and I love that for Tracy. I'm getting all sentimental, guys. Can you go to the next one? Now, I always save the sanctuary for last for people who are coming to check out the church, because I think it's a little surprising that it's not bigger, granted, given all that we do. I have 50 chairs out, and not all of them are filled. Maybe around Christmas and Easter, but outside of that, we're a small group, but we do a lot.
Yes.
And we don't do it by ourselves, we do it with our neighbors. We do it with our partners. We're a community. We're not just a place where people worship. The community is the active loving of God and others. One of our one of our Portland Fruit Tree Project's workers this last year said that we needed to make a community mural that included everybody who uses our campus. And they took charge of it, so I couldn't say no. This is one of the 4 panels that's being painted. It's a beautiful day. They applied for a grant so that we could get some benches in the back of the church. And so we continue to grow, not just as a community, but into further community with one another and with our neighbors. If you look at the center sketch, the orange blob is our church building. The light green blob is one of our community gardens. The turquoise blue-green blob is another part of the garden. The blue bottom corner is the village. It houses 10 people regularly, has a common facility, laundry area, kitchen, so on and so forth. And that green corner in the upper right, that is where our community mural and benches sitting area is going to go.
And the orchard is the middle green?
The orchard is the very, very top parts.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm so grateful for this church that takes love of neighbors seriously and recognizes it through their love of and for and with the neighborhood. And if you get the chance to be involved in such work, I hope you do. I hope you get to. I'm having the time of my life, and I think you will too. Even in this wild firestorm that we're all active in. This stuff keeps me well. Thank you for your time.